Well, clearly we're doing things a little bit differently today. As I consider topics for Empower Project videos, I try to avoid current events and things that are in the news cycle because the shelf life of those videos and the thoughts and truths therein can be short-lived. Today is something of an exception. Coming to you from Tallahassee, Florida, we are experiencing the effects of a degraded Hurricane Irma. It is now a tropical storm, and you can see some of the effects back there. You know, it amazes me in my years of service as the disaster relief director for the Florida Baptist Association, people's reaction to natural disasters. It is not uncommon for people to express anger toward God. After all, how could a loving God allow such a thing as a hurricane to happen? How about floods? How about fires? How about tornadoes? Well, I'd like to share some thoughts with you that may be a little bit different point of view. I'm sort of an apologist for God today. You see, in a previous video, I talked about the fact that the laws of physics are always in effect. Now, who exactly is the author of the laws of physics? Is it a consortium of Harvard scientists who got together and formed a committee to make the standards? No. If you read the creation account, it's an implied fact that God is the author of the laws of physics. When we experience hurricanes, when we experience floods, when we experience wildfires, when we experience tornadoes, when we experience lightning and all sorts of other disastrous events, wouldn't it be fair that we blame God? Well, I think not. Here's why. The laws of physics are always in effect. The laws of physics are agnostic. They do not know or care how we feel about them. Let's look at some examples. Well, let's start with hurricanes. Oh, a hurricane's a terrible thing. Well, is it? A hurricane is nothing more than a heat engine propelled by and combined with a low-pressure system. Well, heat. Is heat a bad thing? I don't know about you, but if you take a shower in the morning, it's nice to have hot water, isn't it? I don't know about you, but when I cook a meal, it's nice that we can cook it rather than just eat raw meat. That'd be kind of bad, wouldn't it? Well, that's the heat. What about the low pressure? How can low pressure be a good thing? Well, have you ever been in an airplane? Do you know that it is the same low pressure that creates and propels a hurricane with its devastating effects is also the same low pressure that prevents airplanes from dropping out of the sky like a rock? Now, I'm not a physicist and I don't want to get too involved, but let's look at this. A wing, the distance over the top of it is longer than the distance beneath it. Now, the plane, through the propulsion of an engine, that's fire, folks. You get going and the wind gets moving and a low pressure system is created above the wing. You could literally tape little strings to the top of the wing and those strings would extend straight up under flight. That is the lift created by a low pressure system. You see, low pressure systems keep a plane from falling like a rock. Well, what about friction? That's another natural law. Boy, friction's a bad thing, isn't it? Have you ever changed your oil? Do you realize if it weren't for friction, you would never need to change your oil? That'd be nice. Oh, but also, by the way, when you put your foot on the brake pedal, your vehicle reliably stops because of the same natural laws of friction. Let's talk about gravity for a minute. You know, gravity's kind of a bad thing, isn't it? You know, it makes us feel heavy. When we look at the destruction that is caused by a hurricane, houses get literally swept away. Well, that's bad, and I don't want to marginalize the devastation and tragedy of such an event. However, what held the house on the ground in the first place? Well, Two things. Gravity. A house is built on a foundation. It's heavy. A house is made out of wood, and it's heavy, so it sits on the ground. It doesn't float off. What else holds a house together? Well, nails. Well, what is a nail? Well, what holds your house together, folks, is friction. The same friction that makes you change your oil, the same friction that stops your car. Gravity does another thing. Water surely runs downhill. Well, if you've watched current events in this hurricane, you have probably observed some floods. The laws of physics are agnostic. As I said earlier, they neither know nor care about the consequences. The water cannot make a decision up at the high ground and say, there's been a lot of rain, and maybe we need to just kind of hold up and wait for some of the water to clear, because if we run downhill now, there's going to be too much water and houses are going to get flooded. No, water simply runs downhill. Yet we are also the benefactors of gravity. That's why things don't just float away. Folks, when we experience natural disasters of any kind, it is tempting to get angry at God. It is tempting to express that anger, and I think God actually understands. But at the same time, I think we have a duty and a burden to be mindful of the fact that the laws of physics were created by God, and they are always in effect, and they are reliable. We can count on them. They are dependable, and in many cases they operate in our favor. So you can't have your cake and eat it too. You can't eat dessert without first eating your meat and potatoes.